Okay, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Great to have you all, and thank you for attending. Today, we'll be talking about multiple venues for identity, for narrative, and for architecture, and how the three mix together, and the discussion that hopefully will appear after the presentations. We have three presenters. The first will be Beyond the Borders by Mohamed Hassan. The second will be Death in Architecture by Laith Matarwa. And the third will be Mobilizing Antiquity and National Identity by Michael Salib. We will give 15 minutes to the presenters to present their manuscripts, and then thereafter we will open the discussion between all of us. Thank you. Mohamed?
So, hi everyone, thank you for coming. So this is a long-term project that I have started in 2024 under the idea of the art of looking and noticing. I started documenting love letters people left for each other on public spaces, particularly green spaces and concrete blocks that replace these spaces under the name of development. So it's a kind of a third perspective to highlight the mass cutting of trees across the country. It got published, part of this project got published in an interactive website as part of a creative workshop where I expressed my ideas through image and text. So this is a project that didn't begin as a formal research. It began as a discomfort with how parts of the city slowly disappear while others persist in quieter ways. In Beyond the Borders, I look at surfaces, tree trunks, walls, building facades as spaces that hold traces of what cannot be officially archived. These markings, whether intentional or accidental, form a kind of fragile memory. So coming from a practice that moves between photography and film, I approach this not as a purely academic study, but as an attempt to observe how the city records itself through use, damage, and change, especially as urban development continues to reshape these spaces. There are things in the cities that are never and will never be archived. They remain on surfaces, in plain sight, yet largely unseen, until we allow a moment of pause and recognition. Markets that resist both preservation and erasure. Okay. They exist in between. Letters carved into a tree bark, names painted over a wall, a marketing call, a gesture that made without intention to endure. These acts occur, but never recorded as having occurred, and that led to one conclusion. Not everything that takes place in time becomes history. This project begins with a simple question: what forms of memory endure outside the archive, and what conditions shape their disappearance? I came to title for this kind of traces, that public spaces as an official archive. I explore the city not as a fixed structure, but as a field of surfaces. Unlike institutional archives, which promise durability through classification and preservation, these markers emerge without audience, authority, or guarantee of continuity. They remain exposed to growth and removal. Ismailia here is not only a case study or a site, it's a question. Once called the City of Gardens, now a space where the visible is being reshaped and the invisible struggles to remain. Across sidewalks, parks, and building facades, public space acts as an official archive, not curated, not stabilized, but continuously accumulated. This archive holds incombative temporalities, the fleeting and the violent, the intimate and the historical. And yet, this archive doesn't declare itself. It doesn't organize or preserve. Rather, it sends out and disappears. And now back to the green spaces. Tree trunks carry a particular kind of inscriptions, names carved into haste, initials enclosed in fragile geometries, dates without events, and declaration without witnesses. These marks don't seek history. They don't even seek permanence. They emerge from moment, someone passing, pausing, and pressing a blade or a nail into a bark, leaving his trace, then leaves. And yet, this fragile archive is disappearing. Trees are cut down and removed in the name of development to widen roads, clear spaces, or to expand the urban scene. But with each tree removed, something else disappears. Not just what is visible and known, like wood or shades, but an entire surface of accumulated traces. The mark doesn't disappear, but the whole surface is gone. Buildings as a whiteboard or a shield. Buildings hold a different duration. They don't grow, but they are never still. Facades accumulate time in layers. Paint applied and stripped away, cracks opening and sealed. Each intervention leaves a trace. Each repair covers another. A wall carries more than what is visible. Beneath it, older colors, previous textures, and erased marks. Some inscriptions are intentional, others are not. Unlike trees, not all of these belong to history, remaining within time but outside recognition. But buildings also carry something else, and here we can draw the line between what's historical and what's not. Another kind of inscription, one that doesn't emerge from yesterday's gestures, but from violence. In Ismailia, some of the marks goes back to the war of attrition, or in Arabic, Harb al-Istinzaf, that lasted for 3 years, from 1967 to 1970. During that period, Israeli occupation forces intentionally fired directly at residential areas, leading to the displacement of civilians to various cities across the country. This is not distant history. It's passed through the city, through its streets and through its homes. Civilian houses were struck purposely. Walls absorbed impact. Interiors were exposed, and the boundary between inside and outside collapsed. Buildings became surfaces of violence, and yet many of these buildings are no longer there. New structures rise in their places. Malls, high-rise buildings, commercial facades, and as in green spaces, something is lost in this process, not only what is visible and obvious, but the evidence that these spaces were once lived in, damaged, and endured. Bullet holes here don't just appear, they rupture. No intention to leave a mark, only force entering the surface. Some of these ruptures still exist, hidden in plain sight, and when you encounter one, it feels misplaced, as if the wall is carrying something it shouldn't still hold. Some are covered in paint, some are partially sealed, some disappeared completely when the buildings are renovated or demolished. The event is historical, documented and dated, but the trace of violence is not. It slips between categories, too material to ignore and too unprotected to endure. A fragment of violence without narrative or framing. Across all these surfaces, there is a shared condition. They can vanish at any moment, not gradually, but at once. These acts are done under the name of development, but they are also something else. They are forms of erasure. Public space is reconfigured according to a certain vision, which is more profitable, a vision aligned with capital. And in this process, the traces that resist this order are removed. What disappears is not only the mark, but the possibility of encountering it. Catastrophe here is not a single event, it's a process. It unfolds slowly through erosion, repainting, and neglect, and suddenly through cutting and demolishing. Nothing announces the loss. catastrophe here is quiet. It doesn't only destroy what exists, it removes the very surfaces upon which memory could remain. Now back to the idea of the art of noticing what cannot be interrupted. So what does it mean to look? To notice what was never meant to endure. To stand before a trace that doesn't explain itself. Drawing on a sensibility close to John Berger, looking becomes a form of attention. To remain with what is disappearing without fixing or resolving it. To see a carved name and not know who carved it. To see a trace of violence and not witness the moment it came from. And to accept that this is all that remains. Ismailia unfolds as a composite archive, carrying overlapping traces, some intimate, some violent, and most unrecognized, allows it to appear and to disappear. The city becomes a living archive, not despite its instability, but because of it. A surface where the desire to leave a mark meets the inevitability and the force of disappearance. And finally, the urgent questions that follows the project. What counts as memory if it's never archived? When these acts are called development, what else is being concealed? And finally, what happened to a moment of violence when its marks no longer exist? Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed, for being on time.